So it's been a big year for everybody. Congratulations to the deal team. We're all going to make it. I think, for us at Messari, it's been an exciting year as well. And we kind of ride the wave and the rising tide of the rest of the industry. Our team's grown from 15 to 60 so far this year, and we expect to continue to grow at a similar pace along with the rest of the industry the next couple of years. I want a special shout out to two hires that we made this year. Peter Boards, who I snatched back from CoinDesk after a long history together to build out our mainnet events franchise, and he helped set up the venue for tonight. And Emily Coleman, who's our director of marketing as well, putting this event together. So thank you to those two in particular. There are a lot of people to shout out for the product that we're about to launch in a little bit, but I'm not going to spoil Florent's special presentation. So for those of you who are not intimately familiar with Messari and you just got this Evite and you're like, oh, I'm free tonight and I want to grab a couple drinks, we curate and aggregate crypto information at scale for assets and DAOs and basically anything that's tokenized. And historically, we've had two core products: our research and this kind of massive data ingestion platform that is available for pro subscribers and enterprises and kind of everywhere in between. Early this year, we launched our first enterprise subscription tier, which has Intel, a crypto corporate actions library. It's an alerts and monitoring system that hundreds of investors, exchanges, wallets, hopefully, many of the folks in this room, I think, already use it. And that was really our foothold into, I'd say, like professional workflows. So going beyond just something for speculators to a tool that's actually used in kind of day-to-day operations for the long-term holders and builders within the crypto community. We've done a lot on the Messari Hub side, which is basically how we scale our research team. That analyst team is up to 25, 30 now. Eric, what are we up to now? I just signed another offer like right before I got on stage. So 30, yeah. So about 30 full-time. And then we've got a community that's managed by Marcia, who actually just joined us this year as the GM of our hub. It's kind of like our layer 2 scaling for humans and the analysts that are in our community. We expect that the need for that is not going to go away, and ultimately we're going to need to have a decentralized workforce that's tackling thousands upon thousands of assets that need some type of outsourced investor relations coverage or outsourced research that will put this asset class on par with traditional stocks and ultimately put us in a position in a favorable light where we're going to be treated seriously as an industry because there's some symmetry between what's available in the public markets and what's available in crypto. And so to that end, I am incredibly excited about this product that Florent is going to show us in just a minute. It's a culmination of several months of work and basically most of the focus from our entire product and engineering team over these last few months. It is also our first foray into Web3 connectivity, which is you're going to see in a minute is going to in the coming years bleed across the entire Messari product. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce someone that started actually as a volunteer analyst and then became a research analyst and then became a product associate and now in the span of just a couple of years has gone from intern that we never would have hired because he's based in Paris, not because he's not smart, and not because he's not good looking, because he is the only person, clearly he's French because he tucked in his sweatshirt and he doesn't look ridiculous. So Florent, the floor is yours. This is a big moment and congratulations. Take it away.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks, everyone. So if at one point of the presentation, I just say a French word, it's normal. It's because I don't find the English word, so I'll say it in French. So we can get started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to explain why we built Governor, and then I'm going to explain what is Governor. So presentation is going to be short. Shouldn't make too long. So we can just get started, I guess. So why Governor? So what we realized is that the space is not standardized at all. So if you look even just on Ethereum and the main protocols, everyone is doing something different. So like Uniswap using Snapshot and Governor Bravo, Compound is using Governor Bravo, Fei protocol moved to Open Zeppelin Governor, Aave is using its own framework, and the list goes on. Curve has its own framework. And that's just like the main protocols on Ethereum. There are a lot of like new frameworks going off, or like existing frameworks that are being used by like minor or like less big protocols. So Aragon, Colony, Moloch, Gnosis Guild, Orca Protocol, and Julia is going to talk right after with Ryan. And this is just on Ethereum. So we realize there is really a standardization problem because everyone is doing something different. So even when some governances are using similar frameworks, they are still doing it differently. So if you look at the Uniswap governance, they'll have 2 snapshot proposals, and if both goes well, then there will be an on-chain vote. Whereas other platforms that use Snapshot don't have any on-chain kind of voting mechanism, and they'll use Gnosis Safe to execute the decision. Compound, which is Bravo, like Uniswap, doesn't have Snapshot. So when you start digging into like all these governance processes really work, you realize that everyone is doing its own thing, and it's hard to standardize really. What's happening then is that it makes it very hard to follow what's really happening. So like if you're participating in one governance, you gotta keep 10 tabs open all the time. The forum post, Snapshot voting portal, on-chain voting portal, Twitter, Discord. So when you participate in multiple governances, it's like really 10 monitors. So because of that, the participation rates remain pretty low. In general, even on Snapshot, very few addresses are voting, and it's actually free to vote there, but like no one really cares about it. And it's pretty crazy because when you think about it, what is being controlled by governance actually the security of the protocol, kind of like the attractiveness of the protocol, the treasury expenses, and at the end of the day, the asset, the native asset value. So governance is controlling very important things, yet no one really cares about governance because no one knows what's happening in governance. So because of all of that, we decided to build Governor. And I'm going to talk more about what Governor really is. So Governor is a platform to track proposal, vote, and delegate across 40 plus governances. So we started by tackling the Ethereum-based major protocols that use Snapshot, Governor Alpha, and Governor Bravo. But the idea of Governor is that it's framework agnostic. So it can scale across all the frameworks I showed in the beginning. So I'll just have slides because it's easier than giving a demo, and I'm also sure that no one is going to break live. But so Governor allows to track proposals throughout the entire life cycle. If you're familiar with the Messari product, we're pretty big on having like kind of table views where you can track a lot of things in a single screen. Governor is exactly that, but really for governance proposal. So you can see all the proposal going on, all the preliminary discussion going on. So we start tackling things and tracking things before they even get to a vote. You can see all the active votes. And again, you can filter that by whatever governance you care about. So if you want to just follow one governance, you can do that on Governor. But if you participate in like 10 governances, you can actually do that on Governor too. So taking the Uniswap example from before, we basically merge all the Uniswap kind of phases into a single page. So before Governor, in order to vote and participate in this proposal from Uniswap, which was changing the governance contract to Compound's Governor Bravo, you had to go to, I think it was 8 websites. You had to go to 2 or 3 forum posts, then 2 snapshot vote, then a voting portal, then Twitter, Discord. It was very hard to track just one single proposal from one single governance. On Governor, we bring basically all of that into a single page for every proposal. So you can see key stats for each of the kind of phases. So like Snapshot, Governor Alpha, Governor Bravo, you'll get the voters, you'll get the results, you'll get the Snapshot block, you'll get basically everything you can get on Snapshot on the voting portal in a single page. You can vote, delegate, off-chain and on-chain from Messari. So that's the first time we actually allow you to connect your wallet to Messari. So we slowly moving from just being like Web2 company to being a Web3 company, but that's actually just the beginning really. But now you can connect your wallet and you can cast your vote, you can delegate, so you can really manage governance, both from like an information standpoint, like learning what's going on, but also from a participation standpoint, actually voting and delegating on governor. On top of just like the data side and the participation side, we also add kind of like this layer of like created summaries that we've been doing for a while. So because we have this team of analysts, we're able to add classification of proposal. So we can tell you this proposal is about, well, in this case, I can't really read, but parameter change, or it's about like token supply. We'll tell you exactly what the proposal is about, and we'll give you like a short summary. Because what we realized, sometimes it takes a lot of time to go through like the entire forum post to understand just what the proposal is about. So we'll summarize it for you. And something that we haven't built yet, so like an alerting system. In this case, you'll just get all the proposal directly on your email, on Slack, without having to go through everything. But yeah, that's basically Governor. I think you'll get a much better idea when you actually try it on Messari. But yeah, just wanted to say that this is just the beginning. So we built that in, I think, 3 to 4 months with a portion of our team. But like the idea is really to scale Governor across governances and across like all the frameworks that exist today and the frameworks that exist tomorrow. As I said, we're framework agnostic. We don't believe that Governor Alpha, Governor Bravo are going to be the only framework used for like 100 years. There's going to be a lot more. So we really think of Governor as this framework agnostic tool that is going to scale across governance and also across chains, not only on Ethereum. In terms of specific features, those are just examples, but right now we've really focused on the pay point we've identified, which is tracking proposal and voting. But like there are a lot of other things that we want to dig into, like having more transparency around delegates and voters, having more transparency about the processes of different governances, having more transparency around the treasury inflows, outflows of the main DAOs. So really a lot of work we can do on that, and a lot more than just that, but I'll keep the surprise for later. Finally, I want to give a big shout out to all the Governor team. Most of them are here today. Craig and Caro are not there. Craig is getting married, and Caro is in Europe. But the rest of it is there, so if you see them, really give them a big shout out. They did most of the work. I'm presenting, but like they basically built the product. So shout out to Dira, Nira, Malcolm, Nick, Ricky, and Thomas, that is French too. It's important to say it, I mean. Yeah, big shout out to all the team because they really build the product. And yeah, I want to open for a Q&A if any of you have any question. If you don't, then we can talk about it like right after.
So I do delegate work for MakerDAO, and I was wondering with regards to expanding that role, right? Like, so I do it for MakerDAO, but I'm thinking of doing it for Faith or other protocols. How easy would it be for me to kind of understand every single proposal, right? Because MakerDAO is complex enough. Would you guys incorporate something like an analyst kind of giving delegated as a service, right? Because that's what I call it, delegate as a service. Kind of a brief report, and then let the delegate kind of make the decision of which way they should vote. Not just grants and stuff like that, but crucial decisions like onboarding, treasury, expenditures, things like that.
Yeah, really want to give all the information for the delegate to take decisions. So in the case of Maker, we don't support Maker yet, but we intend to support Maker. But the idea is that if you want to be a delegate on like multiple governances, you can just, I mean, the ideal goal is you'll just subscribe to whatever you're interested in. So let's say you just want to participate in like some types of proposal, and we'll give you all the relevant information to participate in it. And the idea is also kind of building this like delegate profile and having kind of like real participation, like who is voting what. So you're not by yourself trying to figure out what you should do, but like you can actually see what others are doing. So yeah, and I think we had a lot of, right now, we really had just the created summaries portion, because that's kind of like, we have a small team of analysts working on it, but the idea is really to add value on like longer form kind of research on top of like governance events to give like a lot more information on what's happening. Yeah, so calculation on the sentiment bar is not automated today. So basically what we do is we have analysts that go through each of the forum posts we cover, and we'll read each of the community members' reaction to a given proposal. We thought about automating it, but I mean, even discourse is not really Sybil resistant, so like it's kind of, people will just create count and will say like, oh, this is shit. And I mean, we have no way to know. I think the idea is to slowly identify kind of key community members, the one that participates a lot, and then we'll be able to automate more of that for like, you know, knowing kind of sentiment analysis of what they use, what they say. But right now it's really a manual work of like going through the posts, trying to see what the community is thinking about it. And sentiment can actually change through time. So let's say there's like a new proposal, new discussion going on today, and everyone is like, well, this is so great, it's going to be very positive. But then if in 2 days, a lot of the community says, oh, well, that's not that great because of that, or we should do that, we'll actually change the sentiment through time.
Hi, I found that a lot of the more informal and juicy discussion about DAO strategy stuff happens on like Discord and Telegram. Is there plans to add like a chat room-esque sort of thing to Governor that would usurp that at all?
So you mean like integrating discussion directly on Governor, or
so like
tracking what's
something
happening?
more than like a forum, like more like a informal chat room where stuff gets discussed?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not something we've focused on so far. Similarly, like we haven't focused on like bringing the discussion aspect of forum within Messari yet. But yeah, kind of like a troll box, I think will be actually funny. I think we also want like our analysts to live directly in the different communities. So like being active participant on like the Discord, just trying to understand like what's going on really, and not just doing like surface level work of just like reading every proposal that comes up on Snapshots. So yeah, I think it's a great idea.
So to that point, I think you mentioned Discord and Telegram and Twitter a lot. Is that the only way it's integrated right now, is by those analyst reviews, or is there another way that the posts are integrated into the system?
Well, do you mean like the discussion from the communities get into the system?
Yes, I guess. Is it being used for stuff other than the analyst sentiment review?
Oh, so the discussion are being synthesized again, and we also highlight the key community arguments. So what we'll do is we'll look at the kind of like the key community arguments, so like what like key people are saying about the proposal, and we'll bring that into Messari. So again, like you don't have to go through like the whole feed, but you can actually see like, well, that person says that about that proposal. So it kind of gives you, and you can filter by like who is for, who is against, who is neutral. So it kind of gives you like a better picture of like what really is happening, rather than just us telling you like it's a neutral sentiment or like a positive sentiment.
How do you decide which platforms you will or should not add to your product? And are there any cases where you just wouldn't want a product or a platform?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Right now, we've prioritized based on the frameworks we support and kind of like the activity going on or like the size of the protocol. So we support Snapshot, Alpha, and Bravo. So we basically took like the major governances that are on these frameworks. The idea is to add as many as we can. Right now, we're kind of like in a very early MVP stage. So we're going to add slowly new governances on Snapshot, Alpha, Bravo. We also want to extend the number of frameworks we support, so like Maker, for example, Aave, Curve, OpenZeppelin Governor, which a lot of protocols are using now. So it's a combination of like what we can do from a tech side and a resource side, but I think the end goal is to cover every DAO that exists. Today we're doing it in like a kind of semi-automated way. We have ingestion and we have the manual way on top of it. But like the end goal is to only keep the manual way for like the most kind of high value research on top of it. So yeah, we'll support any community, any DAO. I guess today there is not like fundamentally DAOs that we should not support. If that happens, that may be a question, but today I think it's fine to support everyone.
For the more controversial proposals, is Messari going to take a neutral stance, or is there going to be like collaboration with, let's say, the research division where they provide an opinion?
For now, we're going to take a neutral stance. I mean, we'll just report whatever the community. I think we've talked internally a little bit about being maybe a delegate in the future ourselves. It's not something we've really strategized for now. So I think as long as we don't have clear guidelines about what to cover, everything will be neutral coming from Messari. If ever, like the content on Messari is not being covered by our analysts directly, but by like a third party, then we may be able to take a position because it doesn't impact how we cover it. But for now, we won't participate actively, but it's an open question. I think we'll do it at some point.
Connected to that, is there a concern around Messari controlling, like if this was to become very popular, the context around a vote for a majority of voters?
Yeah, I think they're cool given our current flows, but that's also because we kind of like at the MVP stage. I think the goal is to slowly remove Messari from like all of this process basically. So I mean, for discourse using the API, for example, instead of having an analyst, so you can see like all the forum posts, maybe decentralizing who highlights kind of like the key community arguments rather than having Messari analysts. I think in general, like our analysts have been covering the space for like years, and we have like the Intel product, like enterprise grade product, which is like only facts and never anything else than facts, and everyone is kind of using it for that. So we think we have like legitimacy in doing that for now, but definitely at some point, I mean, since like DAOs are gonna take over the world, like if every governance goes through Messari, I mean, yeah, at that point that will be a concern. But yeah, we'll make sure it's not a concern, I think. Okay, well, I'll wrap it up. Gonna give the mic back to Ryan, but thanks everyone, and thanks to the team again.
Well, there we go. Well, I know that Emily is glad that Florent took the Q&A because that was terrific and on message. And I would have gotten too excited. I probably would have spilled all of our secrets for 2022. So Florent, amazing work. All the developers on this, amazing work. We're going to have one panel that I think brings us home and brings a little context to why we're all here, right? So I assume that most people in this room know a little bit about Messari at this point. We're really excited about this new product, but I want to kind of come back to the why of DAOs, and Florent alluded to it at the end of his Q&A. We think 2022 is going to be the year of DAOs. As we kind of do a retrospective on 2021, we've got the financial system and kind of the liquid markets in DeFi that are connecting Web3. We've got the virtual goods that are going to constitute, you know, the metaverse and modules of our identities with NFTs. We've got actual scaling solutions and interoperability solutions that work, and we're starting to see a lot of innovation there that's custom fit for different applications. Things that were talked about years ago that I personally thought would take a decade versus a few years. Things like decentralized social media and, you know, real companies taking seriously, you know, building in the metaverse, things like that. Now the question is, how does it all get governed, right? And how do we build something that's actually better than the centralized institutions that we're going to replace? And I don't think that's a trivial topic for discussion, because we've seen a lot of Florent, what's the French word for clusterfuck? Yeah, no. I was going to be more diplomatic since we're live, but we've seen a lot of that in protocol governance so far, and it's a growing pain, right? And it's because this becomes a very human-intensive process, and we're talking about personalities, and we're talking about people with big visions for the future, and they don't always line up. So I think it's a massive opportunity, and at the end of the day, you know, my 15-year, 20-year thesis is that DAOs are going to replace companies, NGOs, governments, social circles, and they're going to be an organizing primitive for a lot of society, especially as we spend more and more time online. And in the metaverse. So I don't think I could possibly be more bullish on it. You know, we've basically invited every single person that we know in DAO governance and DAO infrastructure to this event, and we want to continue to work with them, even if there are some similarities in you know, to a certain extent in the product. More often than not, we're going to want to kind of build some of the Legos and build with some of the other Legos you know, throughout the space. So I'm very excited for this panel to join me on stage. We've got Julia from Orca Protocol. We've got Victor from Bison Trails. And we've got Aaron from OpenLaw, now Tribute. And if we can share two mics, I don't know where the second mic went, just so I'm not passing it, you know, kind of all around, we can share two mics. For starters, I'll give a little context for why I think this is going to be a really interesting discussion. Starting, Aaron, with you, I would say the godfather of DAOs, but in the good way, right? So post DAO apocalypse in 2016, you've kind of laid the foundation with open law and a lot of the legal apparatus to actually stage a comeback and figure out how DAOs integrate with the real world. Victor, I think you invented the protocol specialist title within the industry. Now at Coinbase, but Bison Trails within Coinbase Cloud. And Julia, I think what you're doing with Orca Protocol is kind of aligned with our vision of DAOs as well, which is this isn't just about like proxy votes or board level decisions that everybody is trying to stake their tokens on, but ultimately there's going to be a lot of delegated authority. And we're basically trying to re-engineer the connective tissues of companies as we build out the DAO stack, right? So I guess with that as a little bit of context, and I know I didn't do any of you justice like completely with like the one-liner, but just how these puzzle pieces fit together. It does feel, and I know we're all biased for this, but it feels like we're at a moment where DAOs are just going to explode, right? And they're going to be ubiquitous, and everybody's going to be talking about them next year and using them and experimenting with them. Why do we all feel that way? I just kind of gave my vision of the world, but how do you think about the next couple of years and what some of the most important building blocks are going to be, like broadly, and then we can use that to kind of double click on key themes and kind of go around to what you're all specifically working on.
Thank you. Ladies first. I am the most bullish on DAOs, I think, because at its core, we're building fluid organizations. And I think, obviously, in the traditional world that we see, like, it is purposely very exclusionary to a lot of people. And I think DAO's superpower is your ability to affect change very quickly in an organization. And I think why we will see this massive boom in DAOs in the next year is that I think people are starting to see the power and the potential of DAOs, but we're really bottlenecked by the infrastructure and information that we have available to DAOs, which is why what Messari is building with Governor is so important for that future. So I think 2022 is going to be the year because a lot of the tools that are being built out now will go live. And actually start to enable some of the DAO activity that is rumbling right now.
Victor, you were one of our early users of Intel, right? Another kind of information product that is similarly structured and kind of Governor is almost like a double click on Intel. So can you just talk about, from a workflow perspective, someone that's now maybe not directly, but as a team responsible for custodying assets, managing other people's money, and making sure that there's no broken workflows when you're dealing with custodied assets. Where does governance fit in, and how are you thinking about the kind of landscape of tools, but really what you need on a day-to-day basis to do the very basics in being a good steward of that capital and that voting power?
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great question. First thing, especially if there's any feds here, Bison Trails is a non-custodial platform, so we do not take custody of people's assets. But having said that, we run a lot of validators. We work with a lot of folks who run validators, such as custodians and exchanges and funds. And there's really two components there. I think the first thing is that when we think about Bison Trails' role in the ecosystem, like we are very significant participants in a lot of different projects, a lot of layer 1 protocols, layer 2, work tokens, and so on. And that comes with responsibility. And when we look at ENS, for example, and they talk about how responsibility is part of the DAO, like we've been living and breathing that for 3 years. And what does that mean? It means that we're extremely close to the teams, extremely close to the technology, extremely close to what's actually happening at the base layer. Like we know these protocols better than almost anybody. And with that, you have to do the right thing. Especially if you're running a good portion of them, you have to have an informed opinion. When somebody is, putting out a proposal, like it's our job to, as Bison Trails, to be like representatives in the community. And so leveraging Messari, not only on the Intel product now for a long time, but also now looking forward to the Governor product, it becomes incredibly important because we're across something like 40 different protocols. It's hard to keep up. So that's our role as ecosystem leaders. But the second role is that we work with a lot of exchanges and custodians and funds, and these folks are also, as you can imagine, they have tons of time to commit to this. No, just kidding. They are super strapped. And so it's not enough to just tell them, hey, like this governance proposal is going on. We have to educate them and like help them understand the context and like, you know, sometimes hop on calls and provide a lot of detail that isn't otherwise available. And so leveraging, obviously, Messari products is an incredible, incredible resource to be able to do that effectively.
And as you can see, like there's a sniper up in the rafters so that they say nice things. But Aaron is not going to be deterred by that. He'll shoot straight. Aaron, let's talk about like where the rubber meets the road with DAOs and DAO governance, which is like their actual legal structure in the real world. Because I can't think of anyone that's been more on the ball than this for years now than you and your team at OpenLaw and the work that you've done in the Lao, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all agree that 2022 is going to be the year of the DAOs. I think we, frankly, have already seen explosive growth. Just looking at kind of the numbers, if you go back to February of last year, you had about $10 million-ish in DAOs, a couple thousand users. It's now up to well over $1 billion, hundreds of thousands of users. And I think we're starting to see even the DAO ecosystem kind of fracture from looking at layer one protocols or more DeFi protocols, the stuff that we've been focused on, which is more how to pool capital and make investments. And then I think we're going to see a new wave of NFT-focused DAOs, NFT/social token DAOs that probably, my sense is that's what's going to be the explosive growth. You're going to see lots of more consumer interactions with DAOs, a little less focus on some of the DeFi-related projects. And the tooling, as Julia mentioned before, is spectacular, and it's getting better by the day. So it feels to me a lot like NFTs did 1.5, 2 years ago, just in terms of marketplace timing. A big question always with this is how do you structure them? There's lots of different conversations. I don't think anybody fully knows the answer, but we're going to see a lot of experimentation around that. For some DAOs, like the DAOs that we put together, we have them wrapped so that they can interact with the real world. That opens up a whole range of possibilities, like thinking about flatter, potentially more efficient venture capital models, Hollywood-related production models, other models that may impact and interact with the real world. So if you want to buy land or something like that, make a real-world impact, you have the ability to do that. I think other models that we pioneered are things like unincorporated not-for-profits, which I think would graph nicely onto DeFi DAOs. We've rolled out at least one example with an internet museum. And then I think, you know, people are going to continue to YOLO it, and we'll softly cheer for them in the background. So I think it's kind of this mix of crypto anarchists and pragmatists and everybody in between that really accelerates growth and hopefully can get us to the right answer.
We'll stick with you for a minute because I think one of the things that's changed this year with DeFi DAOs is protocol controlled value. So basically like actual real assets that are locked in these governance systems outside of the native token of a project. And you wrote something recently, which I agree with, that there's going to be a lot of zombie DAOs. Do you want to elaborate on that as a concept and why we're talking about like real money that could basically just go into a black hole if there's not better governance tooling?
Well, I mean, I think one, if the core asset of a DAO is just its native token, I mean, being in the space for a long time, we know that some of those are going to probably get marked down at some point by like 95, 99%, just like any project, right? It's no different. And then they'll just kind of be floating around kind of locked assets, either in a multi-sig or hopefully something a little bit more community controlled. So I do think that's a problem. I also think we're going to see the flip side, which is actually getting towards fully on-chain autonomous systems, which I also think is kind of zombie-like too, and I think that's pretty fascinating. So that was what I was referring to there. You're going to see kind of dead projects, and then also, actually, I think we're starting to see the beginning of fully autonomous DAOs, which is pretty fascinating, at least from my perspective.
We're gonna go back, do a little snake draft here, but Victor, can you talk? Go ahead. You're like.
Can I get a second? Just out of curiosity, who here would consider themselves an active member of a DAO? Can you please put your hand up? An active member of a DAO. Okay, so we have maybe like, I don't know, 15 people. Out of the people, keep your hands up for a second. Out of the people that are active members of DAOs, who here is having a good time doing it? No, serious question. I am shocked at the number of hands up because I gotta tell you, like almost everybody that I know that is an active contributor of a DAO is so unhappy with it because you're a professional shit eater. And so I think, I do think DAOs are very obviously the future, but I think that people are really underestimating the extent of how difficult it is from like the moment that you start a DAO to the moment that you really like continue it and grow it and mature it and enable structure and leadership and a brand. And so I definitely think 2022 will be the year of the DAO, and I think that a lot of DAOs are going to get started. But I think it's going to have, a pretty similar failure rate to the ICO boom. It's just going to be a lot of things and then dumps, because it's so painful.
Can you just elaborate on why people are not having fun? Maybe by talking not about specific clients, but clients in general. And some of the things that they get at the 11th hour, they get notified there's this proposal. We're not going to reach quorum unless you vote your tokens. Or what are some of the real like nightmare scenarios that just literally there's no chance in hell that it would happen in corporate America?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time, people don't read any of the things that they vote on. Like, honest to God. Like, no, seriously, this is extremely common. And there'll be like technical upgrades passed where nobody looks at the code. Like a very small section of people do, but most do not. And this is like a quote unquote normal thing because it's just so hard to find the bandwidth. And frankly, nobody has a dedicated resource to go and conduct code audits before they vote on something, right? Like it's so hard to scale that out. And so the level of trust that we have in our fellow DAO members to do the right thing is immense. And it works right now because we're such small and fairly insular communities. But in the future, like that's going to be very hard because you won't have that. Like it's hard to scale that trust up as you breach hundreds of thousands or millions of members in your community.
Julia, we'll come back to you because I think this is a good segue because the actual management of DAOs is going to be from individuals or groups that actually care. And I think the thing that we haven't seen yet is like delegated authority across DAOs, which leads to some of these issues of like, oh, I know I need to vote even though I haven't read this thing. So, you basically just like check a box. When in reality, what you want to do is you want to have almost like a board of directors that's like voting for committees and like who's actually specialized and capable of doing this and like who are, Aaron's shaking his head. So, okay, so we're going to have a little spice here. So Julia, and then we'll go back to Aaron. I think he's taking exception with the way that I'm like making a corporate comparison, but we'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Victor said is right. Like, most people don't pay attention to what they're even voting on. And I think, like, can we expect anything else from them? Like, when in the real world do we actually see, like, informed, engaged voters? Sorry. But it's true. Like, we have a really hard time getting people to care about these governance decisions. And I think Victor brought up a good point, is like, why would we even have like technical contributors or non-technical contributors voting on technical decisions when like they can't review that code base? Most of the technical people won't even review that code base. And so that is like something we're very passionate about with Orca and what we're building with pods, which is basically how we build governance around small working groups of people based on their expertise rather than just their token holdings. And I think this just comes down to the tools that are available. The sort of coordination mechanisms that exist are slim to none. Like Florent just showed in the demo, the main coordination mechanism we use is some type of governor contract. So that's some type of token-weighted voting. And that's our only mechanism for decision making right now, which is incredibly flawed. And like Ryan said, like we basically need to figure out how we can sort of delegate some decision making and empower contributors into positions of power and give them a voice to actually make decisions so that DAOs can actually work more effectively and actually move forward, period, which I think a lot of DAOs today are extremely bottlenecked by their own design. Aaron and I disagree sometimes on the concept of leadership in organizations, and I think that the way we think about it with Orca is how we create localized hierarchies. So, and basically create sort of checks and balances systems to ensure that there's not a single group of people that has an immense amount of power in an ecosystem, which unfortunately is it's a poorly kept secret today that most DAOs and protocols are run by like a core team that do have a lot of weight in decision making. So our sort of idea with Orca is how do we distribute some of that decision making and create more visibility around it as well.
I want to go back to you, Aaron. And I know everybody's been patient here. We are in a little bit of a loud space, so a few more minutes for this panel, and then everybody can speak as loudly as they want to. So thank you for paying attention and letting everybody listen on this side. Aaron, you hated my question before I even finished it. So like, can you explain why? Like, you know,
I just think at the end of the day, like if you're going to build hierarchy and boards, you're just use a corporation. I mean, it's like it's been battle tested for hundreds of years. If you want to create that hierarchical structure, you have something. It's called a corporation. They suck. And I think what we're trying to do is evolve that into something that's different. That's why I'm interested in DAOs. I don't want to rebuild digital corporations. That's frankly like hyper boring to me. What I really am focused on is how do we build the tools to enable people to self-order their affairs. I think DeFi DAOs people are understandably very interested in, but when we zoom out in a year or two, they will be a very, very small pocket of this entire ecosystem. And we're already seeing in the, we have 9 DAOs, about $200 million worth of capital has been deployed. The total like NAV of all those DAOs is probably about $2 billion at this point. And we have lots of different decision making that's happening. They're just in smaller communities and are really, in my view, serving as the petri dish that will scale up to these larger DAOs. As an example, quorum-based voting for the DeFi DAOs, in my view, I think it was a bad decision. We don't have quorum-based voting, and we're able to move quick in lots of different ways, deploy tremendous amounts of capital, and do so in a way that's returning something that it looks like it's succeeding even traditional venture capital or some other comparable. So I think there's glimmers of what it looks like, but you need to run these smaller experiments before you kind of scale them up. I think one of the unfortunate side effects with the DeFi DAOs is that they didn't really think about any of these governance things off the bat. They're amazing designers of smart contract-based systems, but adding in and basically replicating some of the lessons from corporations is not going to necessarily work here. So you can build them, that's fine. You'll call them, DACs. I mean, that's what Dan Larimer called them way back in the day. They'll probably run into regulatory issues, and you're probably going to get the same result at the end of the day if you're aspiring to build like a tremendous amount of hierarchy. So that's just kind of my view of everything here.
well, I think a couple things. One is probably a spectrum, right? Where
Always
there
a
are
spectrum.
there are some like emergent organizations, and there are some that are going to be run more like organizations, and then maybe the board of directors actually sits on the floor with all of the other workers, but they can also be deposed because this is like a liquid democracy versus where everybody else that's sitting on the floor has a vote and could potentially vote them out, almost like a parliamentary system. So I think my point with the hierarchy is more about the decision making process, because you're not necessarily going to have quorum voting, nor do you want people signing in for every single minute decision versus like delegated decisions where something like a pod is coming into play.
Yeah, and I think because we see it, and there was one of the questions before, more and more conversations are just going to move into the actual chats around it. So moving out of forums into Discord, abstracting away the entire UX, and this is what we're doing with our Tribute DAO framework, so that you don't need a dApp, you don't need Snapshot, you can do it directly from Discord, trigger smart contract transactions, not pay any gas related to it, internalize in the DAO. I think that's going to be the future stack. It's not going to look necessarily solely in like a web-based experience, and I think that that's important because then you can get more granular decision-making processes and kind of implement them. We're kind of constrained by this crappy, one-dimensional, fairly hard to update, web-based apps that I think a lot of people have been playing around with. I do think these chat communities make a lot more sense.
Okay, so aside from Asari and your own companies, what's one piece of infrastructure that you want to see for 2022? Like wave a magic wand, we need this, it's doable, we just need someone to step up and build it, and we'll have this be a lightning round, and we'll wrap with that.
I can talk about the stuff we're building. So we are getting to a point in the Tribute DAO framework, which is an evolved version of Moloch, and the Moloch framework, where you will have relayers. So if you want to do any on-chain transactions, you will not have to pay any gas. You won't have to have any gas in your wallet. We're starting the prototyping on being able to join a DAO without paying any gas, which I think is really important. And then I also think what we're getting to a point, with DAO tooling is more modular abilities to add and extend and evolve them. So we've already seen this coming up in our networks. It's great if you have a multi-sig, but you can't really do that much with it yet. And even though Zodiac is an amazing concept, it's just super expensive to operate DAOs. So I've spent personally this year in the different DAOs I'm a part of about 25 Ether on gas costs, mostly due to different transactions that I'm voting on or executing, and that's not sustainable. So I actually think the big core features that we need is lowering the costs of operating a DAO so that we can actually see this explosion, which you were talking about before.
You don't think it's worth it to spend $100,000 on democracy, Aaron?
I mean, in an odd way, it has been, but I don't think that's scalable, right? So,
Victor, you have a magic wand.
Yeah, so one thing I'm actually really excited for is I want DAOs to be able to engage with privacy-preserving technologies in a really easy way. I think everybody knowing what everybody's making can be good. I think conducting market operations on Uniswap and being destroyed by frontrunners can be good. But I think these are all like, it's, there's a lot of pain from being a 100% totally transparent at all times organization. And privacy exists for a reason. And I think that DAOs need to make better use of it. Obviously not like operating in secret, obviously not without restraint, but the ability to use it selectively, I think, will go a long way towards helping them function better as organizations. And there's a protocol working on this that my wife works at, but I'm not going to shill it because it's too conflict of interest.
Aztec.
Wasn't me though.
Next time, we're going to have you. That was a mistake from the onset, but you knew that. Julia, take us home.
So obviously,
Just
I'm
one more answer.
also
Settle
very
down.
excited about what we're building at Orca, and to see that come to life in 2022 and see pods everywhere, podify everything. But I think something that's really needed is better on-chain reputation and on-chain credentializing. I think a big problem we see in DAOs today is that, again, there's a very small group of people that's trusted within these DAOs and protocols, and I think that actually exists off of a lot of off-chain relationships. So in order to actually reach the ideals of DAOs that we're working towards, which is these massive, fluid, global organizations, we need to be able to scale trust better, and part of that is being able to understand valuable contributors and ensure that they meet certain requirements or that we can hold them accountable to some of their actions. And I think on-chain credentializing and reputation is going to be a big part of that in order to actually include a much more diverse group of individuals.
I would argue that token curated registries were kind of like the bastard son or the predecessor of NFTs and DAOs, right? Because there's elements in DAOs and NFTs, they're just 100 times better. So I would say curation markets actually work now with DAOs and NFTs with that modular reputation. So I think that's the way that we're going. And no, I'm never going to let TCRs die. They're coming back, baby. All right. On that note, the announcement that they didn't want you to hear tonight, that the Messari TCR is back in full force. No, all of our engineers would quit. So that's just a joke. Thank you very much for coming. Hope you have a great time. Please go downstairs, play around with the product, ask a ton of questions. Thank you to our panelists for your generous time, and go have a drink, have fun.
Thank you.